The rain fell like silver threads that night, soft but endless, painting the city in neon reflections. Safira Jones pressed her umbrella tighter against the wind as she rushed across the empty street. The presentation slides were still open on her laptop at home, and she had no intention of staying out long until the universe decided otherwise. Her heels snapped. She cursed softly, losing balance, the papers she'd been holding scattering into the puddle. That's when a pair of hands caught her, strong, warm, steady. "Careful," a deep voice said, accented slightly, smooth like honey over smoke. She looked up. He wasn't just handsome. He was the kind of man who seemed carved from quiet power, sharp jaw, dark hair slicked back, eyes that didn't belong to strangers. I'm fine," she muttered, trying to gather her papers. "Let me," he said, crouching to help. Their fingers brushed, and something electric passed between them. They ended up at the same bar minutes later, her to dry off him, just for one drink. One drink became two. Words slipped easier than they should have. Laughter came freely, and his gaze, steady and consuming, made her forget the long week, the deadlines, the walls she'd built. "I never do this," she said quietly later, as his hand lingered near hers. "Then don't think," he whispered, leaning close. "Just feel." And she did. Hours blurred into heat and breath and skin. His name, Kai, rolled off her lips like a secret. The night was a blur of tangled sheets and quiet gasps of a woman who hadn't been touched in years finally allowing herself to be seen. When morning came, she left before sunrise. No note, no name, just guilt and the lingering memory of his scent, citrus and cedarwood. She told herself it was over. It had to be. Until 9 a.m. Her office buzzed with nervous energy. The Vega Design Group was pitching for the biggest contract in its history. Safira, lead designer, had been perfecting the presentation for weeks. Then the boardroom doors opened, and in walked him, Kai Zhang. Crisp suit, calm smile. Every inch the CEO of Zenith Design Group, their biggest rival. Safira's blood ran cold. Their eyes met across the room, and in that single moment, the world tilted. He didn't flinch. He didn't show recognition. But the spark in his eyes betrayed him. Safira felt her heart slam against her ribs. The man who had held her all night was now her enemy. And when the project designs mysteriously leaked days later, when Zenith presented her team's exact concept before they could, Safira's heart broke a second time. Because it could only mean one thing. He hadn't just taken her body. He'd taken her dreams, too. The silence in the conference room was unbearable. Safira sat frozen in her chair, the projector's soft hum the only sound as Zenith Design Group unveiled their pitch, her pitch. Every line, every layout, every artistic flourish that had stolen her sleep for weeks was now glowing on their screen under Kai Zhang's calm, confident voice. He stood there like he owned the world, commanding the room with that same quiet intensity she'd once found irresistible. The same hands that had traced fire across her skin now pointed to her stolen work like it belonged to him. Her chest tightened. No, it couldn't be. But when the final slide appeared, her signature concept sketch, the one she'd drawn alone in her apartment at 2 a.m., her throat closed. She felt her pulse hammering as the board members of Vega Design Group exchanged worried glances. The rival company had beaten them to the punch, presenting their idea first and better. Vega's CEO, Mr. Han, turned towards Safira slowly, his face pale and furious. "Care to explain this?" he asked. This can't be," she stammered, standing up. "That's our design. I worked on it. That's my work." Kai's gaze flicked to hers. There was something there, shock, maybe, but it vanished quickly, replaced by that corporate composure. He adjusted his cufflinks like none of this touched him. When the meeting adjourned, she stormed out before anyone could stop her. The city air outside hit her like ice. And then, Safira. That voice. She turned sharply. Kai stood a few feet away, looking nothing like the man who had once whispered her name in the dark. Now he was every inch the CEO, polished, unreadable. "Don't," she snapped, her voice trembling. Don't say my name like that. I didn't know, he said quietly. I swear to you, I didn't know. Don't lie to me. Her laugh was bitter. You show up at the biggest pitch of my career, after that night, and suddenly my designs end up in your company's hands? What was I to you, Kai? A game? A strategy? His expression hardened. You think I used you to steal a project? I don't think, she said, stepping closer, anger burning away her pain. I know. For a heartbeat, they stood inches apart, eyes locked. She wanted to slap him. She wanted to kiss him. Mostly, she wanted to stop feeling anything at all. He took a step toward her, lowering his voice. Safira, I didn't even know who you were that night. This wasn't. Save it. Her voice cracked. You got what you wanted. Congratulations. She turned away before he could see the tears she refused to cry. By the next morning, her office was a battlefield. Emails, meetings, accusations. Her boss wouldn't listen. HR didn't care. To them, it looked like negligence, like she had leaked the designs. When security came to escort her out, she didn't fight it. She just stood there, holding the box of her things, staring at the nameplate they were peeling off her desk. She'd given 3 years of her life to Vega. Now all she had left was a stack of sketches and a heart full of regret. The news spread fast. Vega's project was gone. Zenith had it. Kai Zhang had it. And Safira Jones had become the office scandal. Weeks passed. Her savings dwindled. Rent piled up. The city that once sparkled with promise now felt like a maze of broken dreams. Everywhere she turned, there were reminders of him. The scent of his cologne on a stranger's jacket. The deep timbre of a voice that almost sounded like his. Even her dreams betrayed her, replaying that night in cruel fragments, his touch, his breath, his whispered name. And then one evening, there was a knock at her door. She hesitated before opening it and froze.
Kai.
He looked different.
Exhausted.
Vulnerable in a way she'd never seen before. Before you shut the door, he said softly, please hear me out. She crossed her arms. What do you want, Mr. Zhang? His jaw clenched at the formal tone. The truth. You deserve that much. The truth? Her laugh was brittle. That you played me? He stepped closer, his voice low but intense.
No.
That someone in your company used both of us. There's a mole inside Vega, Safira. I didn't take your designs, they were handed to me. I found out too late. She blinked, confusion battling anger. You expect me to believe that? I expect you to look at me, he said, his voice breaking slightly. And tell me if you really think I could do that to you. For the first time, she met his eyes fully. There was no arrogance there now, no smug satisfaction. Only sincerity.
Pain.
Regret. Her heart betrayed her again, beating too fast, too loud. You should leave, she whispered. I can't do this. He didn't move. I'm not leaving until you know the truth. And as the rain began to fall outside again, just like the night they met, something deep within her whispered that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't over. Rain drummed gently against the window, the sound thick and steady like her pulse. Safira stood frozen in the doorway, Kai's presence pulling at everything inside her she'd tried to bury. He looked nothing like the ruthless CEO the media loved to paint. His hair was slightly damp, his shirt sleeves rolled, his tie loose as if he'd run here straight from another storm. Please, he said again, his voice raw. Just hear me out. Against her better judgment, she stepped aside. He entered quietly, scanning her small apartment, the sketches scattered on the table, the half-eaten noodles, the stack of rejection letters on the counter. His eyes softened, and that hurt more than any accusation. Make it quick, she said, hugging her arms around herself.
Kai took a breath.
A week before the presentation, one of your company's senior partners reached out to my assistant, pretending to negotiate a collaboration. They sent over drafts, claiming they were concept samples for joint review. I didn't know they were yours until I saw your name on the corner of the last file. Her heart twisted. You expect me to believe that? He stepped closer. I didn't even open them at first. I thought it was a mistake. By the time I did, it was too late. My team had already finalized the proposal and submitted it under Zenith. Safira stared at him, trembling. You're saying someone from Vega leaked it? That one of my own? Yes. He hesitated. And I think it was someone close to you. Her mind raced. She thought of Mara, her project manager and supposed friend, who always seemed a little too curious about Safira's drafts. She thought of Mr. Han, the boss who blamed her so quickly. And then, the creeping realization that this wasn't just professional sabotage, it was personal. Kai's voice softened. I tried to fix it. I wanted to explain sooner, but Vega went public with the accusation first. Any move from me would have looked like guilt. Then why come now? She whispered. Because I can't stop thinking about you. The words dropped between them like thunder. Safira blinked, heart pounding. Don't say that. It's the truth, he said. You think I wanted this? That I can't sleep without seeing your face? That I regret every minute that passed between us? Because I don't. Her breath hitched. You ruined my life, Kai. I'm trying to save what's left of it, he said fiercely. Let me help you prove who did this. Safira turned away, pressing her palms against the cool window glass. Why would you care? He stepped behind her, close enough that she could feel his warmth even without touching. Because I care about you. The confession shattered her composure. Tears she'd refused to shed finally spilled. For a long time, neither of them moved. Only the rain spoke between them. When she finally turned, her voice was a whisper. If you're lying, I'll destroy you. Kai gave a faint, tired smile. Then I guess we'll find the truth together. The next few days blurred into cautious alliance. They met in secret cafes, in parking lots, in half-lit corners where no one would see. Together they traced files, hacked email trails, cross-checked internal memos. And the deeper they went, the uglier the truth became. It wasn't Kai. It was Mara. Her supposed friend had been leaking data to Zenith's junior associate, trading designs for a silent commission. When Kai discovered it, he'd fired the associate immediately, but the damage was done, and Safira had taken the fall. The night they found proof, Safira sat at Kai's office desk, staring at the email chain that ruined her. Her fingers trembled as she scrolled, the reality sinking in like ice through her veins. She used me, she whispered. She watched me get destroyed, and she didn't even blink. Kai leaned against the desk beside her, his voice low. People like her don't build. They take. Safira looked up at him, anger and sorrow twisting together. So what now? Now, he said, you rebuild. He turned to face her fully, his hand brushing against hers. You're talented, Safira.
Brilliant, even.
Don't waste that fire on people who try to snuff it out. She looked at him, really looked this time. The man she'd once hated now felt like the only person who saw her clearly. I can't go back to Vega, she murmured. They'd never take me. Then don't. His eyes softened. Start something new with me. The room seemed to still. The rain outside slowed, the hum of the city fading into silence. Safira's breath caught. You're serious? Completely. He took her hand, holding it gently between his. Let's build something honest. Our own company. Our designs. Our name. Her heart ached, torn between fear and longing. It was madness. Reckless. And yet, for the first time in months, it felt right. What if we fail? She whispered. He smiled faintly. Then we fail together. For a long moment, she didn't move. Then, quietly, carefully, she let her hand stay in his. Later that night, as they stood in the elevator leaving his building, Kai reached out and tucked a loose curl behind her ear. His touch lingered, familiar and warm. Safira, he said softly, I'm sorry for everything. She looked up at him, her eyes reflecting the dim city lights. Just don't make me regret trusting you. And when the elevator doors closed, the air between them shifted, charged, fragile, hopeful. For the first time since it all began, Safira felt like maybe, just maybe, her story wasn't over. When the morning light finally broke through the clouds, it felt like permission to breathe again. Safira sat on the fire escape behind her tiny apartment, knees hugged to her chest, staring at the city as if she could redraw her life on its skyline. The proof Kai had uncovered lay open on her laptop, emails, transfer receipts, a string of messages between Mara and a Zenith junior associate. Each screenshot was a blade, but it was also evidence. It was truth. "You ready?" Kai asked softly beside her. He held 2 paper cups of coffee, steam curling up into the cold air. He smelled like rain and cedar and something that made her heart ache with dangerous familiarity. She took a cup with hands that trembled. "Do we make it public? Do we ruin her?" Kai's eyes were steady, full of a steel she'd only ever seen in boardrooms. "We make it right. We don't become what they were." Safira let the words sink in. She'd felt so small for the last few months, exposed, humiliated, hungry for revenge. Now she had a choice: to throw herself into retribution that would dirty her hands, or to stand tall and let the truth do the work. "Okay," she whispered. "Let's do it right." They started with HR. Kai arranged a meeting between Vega's board and an independent cyberforensics team he trusted. No one from Vega could resist a third-party audit when their reputation was on the line. The results were clean, surgical, and undeniable. The leak was traced to Mara's logins at precise times, the funds from the deal routed through accounts linked to the Zenith associate, and a paper trail of messages with a tone of collusion. When the board confronted Mara, she smiled at first, calculated, like a woman who thought herself untouchable. But smiles crumble when the house of cards falls. "You're under investigation," Mr. Hahn said, his voice a hollow thing. "Leave your keys."
Don't come back.
She tried to protest. She spun lies and twisted sentences, but the evidence was a net, and it closed around her with merciless efficiency. Security escorted her out like any other criminal. No cheering, no celebratory music. Just the quiet click of heels down the marble corridor, the flash of camera phones, the slow drip of karma. The media smelled blood. Within 24 hours there were headlines: Vega Mole exposed, designs sold to rival, and the world that had once been warm with her promise grew colder for Mara. Clients pulled back. Old friends avoided her eyes. Offers evaporated. The woman who had laughed at Safira's ambition now found herself boxed into the very margins she had tried to erase another to.
Kai didn't celebrate.
He watched the fallout with a hollow look. For him, nothing about victory tasted sweet. Only necessary. "You did the right thing," he told Safira that night as they walked home under a sky blanketed with city lights. She reached for his hand without thinking, and when their fingers laced together it felt less like a comfort and more like an anchor.
They didn't stop there.
Kai used his resources to ensure any legal threads tied to Mara's betrayals were followed: civil suits for breach of confidentiality, return of illicit payments, and a refusal from Zenith to be implicated in the transaction. Vega's reputation was salvaged slowly, like a wound stitched and dressed, but the scars would remain. Safira's name was cleared in the public eye, and in private meetings her old colleagues avoided the hollow glare of shame. Mara's world crumbled, bank accounts frozen, a professional blacklist, and an eventual settlement that meant she'd never walk into another design pitch without someone whispering about her past. She paid dearly, in ways that were both public and painfully personal, and the ledger of justice tilted, however imperfectly, in Safira's favor. But consequences weren't the same as healing. Safira found herself hollowed out by weeks of interviews, legal meetings, and PR reshuffles. She'd been vindicated, yes, but the taste of victory left a strange metallic tang in her mouth. What she wanted, what she truly wanted, was not simply for Mara to falter. She wanted a life that belonged to her again. "Let's start," Kai said one rainy afternoon, sliding a slim business card across her tiny dining table. On it, in clean font, was a name: Lumo Studio. Underneath, the two names, Kai Zhang and Safira Jones, were printed like a promise. She laughed, surprised at how it sounded: bright, brittle, and hopeful. "Lumos. Light," he said simply. "We make light." They found a small studio nestled between a noodle shop and a florist. It was a bare rectangle of concrete and potential, with a leaking faucet and sunlight that painted golden stripes across the floor in the afternoon. They painted the walls white, dragged in second-hand desks, and hung Safira's sketches on the wall like prayer flags, reminders of what they were building and whom they were building it with. The first few months were a fevered blur. They took on tiny projects, a cafe mural, a boutique's window display, a tech startup's brand identity, and each success tasted like a new tooth growing. Clients praised the unexpected harmony between Kai's corporate precision and Safira's reckless, bleeding-edge creativity. Their small team grew, an intern who worshipped Safira's drafts, a junior developer who swore Kai's spreadsheets were a form of modern art. Late nights became a ritual. They'd argue about fonts and color palettes, and whether a brand should whisper or shout. Then, exhausted and wired and miles past reason, their arguments would melt into small, fierce touches, hands in hair, breath on necks, kisses that tasted like laughter and the salt of two tired hearts. One evening, after locking up a successful pitch for an eco-resort, Safira and Kai sat on the studio floor, backs against the wall, a bottle of cheap wine between them and a pile of sketches at their feet. "You're happy," she said suddenly, as if the thought had escaped her before she could stop it. He looked down at her, eyes soft in the lamplight. "I am. When I'm with you." Her heart flipped in a way that felt dangerously like surrender. "You saved me," she said, and the words rang with more than gratitude. "No," he shook his head. "You saved yourself. I just held the ladder." Their fingers intertwined, tentative at first, then sure. The city outside hummed its endless song, and inside their studio a new melody was being written, note by stubborn note. Mara tried to claw back, angry press releases, whispered accusations that the evidence was manufactured, but the narrative had shifted. Vega issued a formal apology to Safira. The board restructured, and Mara's attempts to drag them into another scandal only served to show the public how desperate and small she had become. When she finally reached out to Safira, an email that smelled of repentance and fear, Safira didn't respond. Not because she was cruel, but because she needed quiet. She needed to let her life move forward without the weight of someone else's ruin pressed against her ribs. One night, months after Lumo's studio opened its doors, they hosted their first gallery showing, an intimate affair with string lights and polished wood floors, with Safira's work at the center. People gathered. Clients, friends, a few old colleagues who'd come to support and watch the woman who'd once been a scandal stand proud as the creator of something beautiful. Kai watched her as she moved through the crowd, laughing, explaining, glowing. When their eyes met across the room, something in them settled. The ache of the past had not vanished, but it had been burned down into something purer. After the show, they stood on the studio balcony, the city unfurling beneath them in a lattice of lights. Kai wrapped his arm around her shoulders, and she leaned into him like home. "You ever think about that night?" she asked softly. He swallowed. "Every day. But not as a mistake. As the beginning that taught us how to build differently." She looked up at him, and for the first time since her life had been flipped inside out, she allowed herself to imagine a future that wasn't stitched from fear or revenge. It was messy and uncertain and utterly theirs. "You make me brave," she admitted, her voice small. "You make me honest," he answered. They kissed then, slow, deliberate, the kind of kiss that stitches two broken places together. It was not a fairy tale sweep. It was two people aware of their scars, choosing one another anyway. Outside, the city kept its restless watch. Inside Lumo's studio, Safira and Kai sealed a new beginning with a quiet vow: to build, to protect, and to love without apology. Mara had paid what she owed in the currency of consequences. But what Safira wanted most was not retribution, it was to rise. And rise she did, hand in hand, design by design, heart by heart.